What's up, Madison? It is really cool to have you here. I want to thank you for coming out and doing an interview with me. Where in the world are you right now?
I'm in the Canadian office, home base, Toronto. I say based in Toronto, but really I'm on a 32-city world tour. So Toronto's kind of like where I sleep a few days of the week, then I head off to do programs all around the world.
Awesome. I wanted to catch up with you just to find out what's going on in your life and also just share any of the recent ideas. The cool thing about you being in the field is you're constantly innovating. So I'd love for you just to share the newest things that are on your mind, the newest things that you're talking about. I was going through your YouTube channel on RSD Madison and kind of checking out all the cool things you were talking about. And I'd love for you to just share with the subscribers on this channel some of the newest innovations that you're working on.
Yeah. So first part, I mean, even for Founders Club, I just want to say I was really excited that even that's a part of it, right? A lot of times when we talk about social dynamics, I think it just involves dating or relationships, but really these are things that are useful in any walk of life. And I think as guys, when guys first kind of get into this, they're younger, they're maybe 20 years old, 25 years old. I actually had a guy at Free Tour the other day who was 15 years old. I was like, wow, are you even supposed to be here? I was like, I didn't know, it was crazy. He was there at 15. And I'm picturing these guys, these people, as they're getting older and they can use this information to kind of like develop themselves and mature as individuals. Really the sky is the limit. Like I can't even imagine what would have happened to me in my life if I found out this stuff when I was like 15, 20 years old, right? So what I think about a lot is I think about kind of like the man in his prime stuff, right? So that's something that Owen talks about a lot. Man in his prime being a guy that as he's getting older, he's developing. How does he now use these skills that he's gathered together to help him out with his finances, help him out with networking, career, help him out being, as Elliot Hulse would say, the best version of yourself. All these things really come to mind, and that's what I'm really focusing on. I'm focusing on how do you take these aspects, build out a character, have these influence every single area of your character, and then make you kind of like the overall package. That's what I'm thinking about. So that's my general direction right now. I'm also thinking about where I want to see the future of this stuff go. So I've been involved in this community for 9-10 years now, which is a long time. I didn't even think about it. It kind of crept up on me, and I was like, oh man, wow, I've been around for a long time. And I think about where I want the direction of this community to go. And these days, I think everybody finds us off of YouTube or something along those lines. And it's like, okay, that's great, but they didn't have any understanding of all the effort that went into it, right? I talk a lot about, whenever I do a speech, I talk a lot about, I was back in the day, I was on a forum, or I would read an article and I try to imagine what social dynamics looked like. I couldn't even picture the nuances, but I would read the details. Then I go out and I try to practice it and implement it, and I bang my head against the wall for not even an hour, but weeks and months in order to figure out how to do something. And I think so because of that, I'm so appreciative of every single thing that I learned, the impact that it makes on me, how hard I had to work to get it, to understand it, to implement it, that I value it so much more. So you have these kids these days that they can just very easily, they could have just went on the internet on YouTube and just typed in their question, RSD, success, and they could have found that answer. But because they didn't have to work for it, they don't appreciate it as much. So my thoughts on this are how do we implement that appreciation for it, right? Appreciation for everything. And I think that impacts every single area. So, even financially, yourself, you were talking about, I saw a video you did the other day, I think it was with Tucker Max or somebody else. In this video, you were talking about how you literally used to go and park at the hotels, the lobby of the hotels, pay $15, eat the food, use the Wi-Fi, and all that kind of stuff. So every dollar that you have now, you have a deepened appreciation and love for it, versus somebody else who might have just kind of stumbled into some money, or these people say they win the lottery and then they blow the lottery in a year or 2 years, they're broke again because they didn't appreciate the growth that went into getting that money. So I think about not just when it comes to dating relationships, but how do you value your success and value your time and trade that as currency for who you're going to be in the future. I don't know if anything there I said kind of caught your eye or attention. You want to expand on it more, if you had a different question you wanted to ask.
It's funny that you mentioned that story about me living in the back of for 2 weeks, living in the back of a 1997 Toyota Avalon in the parking lot of the Sheraton LAX at the airport there. I even had to still pay a little over $10 a day just for the parking fees. And then I would sneak into the hotel because at this time the recession demolished us. And I was using the Wi-Fi there. We were massive debt. We had massive losses, increasing that debt. It was at the point where we had close to $500,000 down, and in 6 months, just through hustle, cleared it off. I came from a family that worked really hard, and I have a large inheritance coming my way, but I didn't want to rely on that. A lot of people will rely on that if they're coming from a successful family. I wanted to hustle myself, get the mentality and earn it myself and have that process. And that's why I stuck with RSD as opposed to just not working. I wanted to have a situation where I was always working, always learning, and that appreciation and success, I say it's that sweetness at the end of the finish line. That is so much sweeter when you put in that work and you put in that effort and you have that suffering and that risk and you push through and you get at the end. I think that relates in business and pickup and everything else in life. I guess in terms of the old man in your prime kind of thing, I would love for you to expand upon what were you actually meaning by that stuff?
Yeah, so I'll definitely bounce into that. Let me just swing off of something you said right there as well, though, because you made a point that I don't know if you even realize how awesome the point that you made is. The point you made is that you were in debt, $500,000 in debt, and you chose to still pay the $14 to invest into yourself. So there's some people, right? And you know people like this probably. There's some people that even though they're in debt, even though they don't have what they want, they're still waiting for the handout and still not willing to make the investment. The best thing that somebody can do that's stuck in a situation is invest into it, actually, right? Like if you're broke, invest into financial books, go to a Millionaire Mind seminar, surround yourself with an environment of people that are worth it. I made a post the other day where I said, you should be spending $5,000 a year on dinner. I didn't mean just eating yourself. I meant like spending $5,000 in terms of going out and having dinner with people that are worth having dinner with. Toronto here, they have something called Soho House, which is a membership, kind of like a private club where you have to be a professional or have something going on for you in your life to be a part of, and you have to pay $1,000 just to be part of that club. Now, I kind of said this to a few of my friends, and the guys that weren't successful, they all had the same response. They're like, oh, really? Like, why would I pay $1,000 for a club? Like, that's stupid. Like, I don't want to pay the $1,000 to get into a club. Like, no, you want to pay the $1,000 to get in the club because that's the barrier for entry. Because in there, you're going to find people that also believe that they're worth $1,000. People that value their time, people that value networking, people that value connections. One of my hardest things that I have right now that I'm dealing with in life is that I'm traveling so much. It's hard to find people that value time the same way that I value time. Does that make sense? Like, my time is so limited that if I have a Wednesday night free, that's literally the only night of the week free that I have. So I need to find somebody that's operating at that same level of high quality with time to appreciate the one night that I have free. They're not gonna flake. They're not gonna fuck me over because if they did, they'd be screwing themselves over. Not somebody who's gonna sit on the couch and smoke weed all day and watch Netflix or whatever it is, right? So I like that you said that because I think it's a key point. The fact that you were down, but you were still willing to pay the $14 to invest into yourself rather than somebody who would just be like, oh, I'm just gonna sit on my couch or like bug my grandma's Wi-Fi or something like that, right? It's like being able to say to yourself, okay, I'm lacking a certain area and I'm gonna invest. People that are unhealthy, they wanna exercise, but they don't wanna get a personal trainer. You know, people that wanna get good at dating relationships, but they don't wanna go out. They don't wanna practice. It's like, you can't do anything for those people. Every single day I log into YouTube, okay? Every single day I log into YouTube, I check my emails and I check my Instagram. I get about 100 messages per week right now of people who don't want to even invest into themselves. They're like, hey, just tell me how I do this. Just give me the answer. Just give it to me. Like with no value exchange whatsoever. And when I see that, I feel sorry for them. I feel bad for them because I know that they're going to be stuck in that rut. They're going to be stuck in that paradigm of give me something for free to help me rather than them investing into themselves to get a result. And how that relates to the man in the prime stuff, which you wanted me to talk about a little bit. I think the man in the prime is so important. Like if you look at dudes these days, the young man, the average guy who's 25 years old, right? Back in the day, this was the 60s, he would have been like the 50s in America, he might have been submitted to a war. I'm Canadian, so I don't know exactly what exactly the dates of the war where they were, but he would have been in a war, right? His grandfather would have been in a war. If you're an immigrant, you may have been even a slave. If you were an immigrant, you might not even had the luxury of being in a war or something, right? So I think guys in our day and age have lost their place in society. They don't know how to develop themselves. Back in old tribes, they call it savannah tribes, the savannah principle up to 10,000 years ago in small remote areas still going on. They would have rites of passage for guys. Rites of passages are where a young man or a young boy would come into his manhood. They would either send him out to the jungle for 3 days to live off the wilderness and fend for himself. You would have these cultural rituals. So either be that, or for example, like I said, he'd be in a war. But all these things would be a rite of passage. But now, in our day and age, we have these young guys who have zero rites of passage. They just don't know what to do with themselves. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they stand for. They don't know what their values are. They've never taken the time to say, what do I want to stand for? What do I want to be? They've mapped out some of their goals. Like, I want to travel to France, and maybe I want to go to Russia, and mapped out a few of their goals, but they haven't mapped out like their character or personal goals. All these things I think really would contribute to it being a man in your prime, or a guy being a man in his prime. Really figuring out at the core, when he was a little kid, who did he want to be? And how could he implement some of those beliefs or dreams into his now older man personality now that he's developing? It's something I think about a lot. I think about it daily pretty much. It's something I spend a lot of my life focusing on. I spent the good part of 6 or 7 years really just joining fraternities, hanging out with older dudes. So when I lived in Montreal, my social circle, half of my social circle, was comprised of men that are over 60 years old. Which is kind of funny when I say it. People kind of look at me strange. I wanted to hang around guys that were 60 years old, because if guys were 60 years old, I knew that they had went through all the bullshit. They had went through all the good parts and bad parts. They thought about what doesn't even matter, and they stripped it down to the essentials of life and what really matters. What would be those key things that a guy should know at my age, in my 30s, right? So I hang out with old dudes. I did a lot of stuff just to kind of figure out what a guy should be developing. And I think I also really pursued that path strongly because I grew up in a single parent household with no dad around. So I didn't have the male figure. I didn't have the male role model. It took me I couldn't have a conversation, we're having a conversation as dudes right now, as guys. I couldn't have a conversation with a guy until my mid-20s. I couldn't even do the bro sports conversation, bro, sports. I couldn't even do that. So when I decided to throw myself into that masculine development, I really threw myself into it hardcore, obsessively. I'm obsessed with everything that I do. I'm very obsessive. I'm very extreme. It can help me in a lot of ways. Some ways I'm pretty sure it's not so great, but I threw myself into that development excessively, and I learned a lot because of it. And I think because I did it with such desperation almost, there was no way I couldn't get good at it. There's no way I couldn't understand it. There's no way I didn't understand the male psyche and psychology and emotions and emotional IQs and intelligent IQs and subconscious mind helping you and all these things. I'm kind of losing my voice here, so let's take a breath for a second. But if you want to jump in there.
What sounds like a lot of the process of discovering what you call man in his prime is really just the process of the path you need to go by in order to discover your core self. And then getting the blueprints and the roadmap of who that is. Going back to some of the things that you were talking about earlier about the process of suffering and pushing things forward, being under a massive amount of pressure and either giving up or not. It kind of reminds me of a movie with Al Pacino called The Devil's Advocate, where Al Pacino is Satan, Lucifer, and he goes to his prodigy, who's an attorney represented by Keanu Reeves. And Keanu Reeves is under a lot of pressure to win this case. Satan comes up to him and says, in life, there's a decision you have to make where you have a lot of pressure on you, and that pressure either does one of two things. Either you're the kind of person who will take that pressure and buckle to it, or you're the kind of person who's going to feed off of it and basically succeed. And he's the kind of person who made that decision to push forward. And although I refer to a lot of movie references as much as Tyler refers to books, I think about that kind of stuff because when pressure really hits you, that's the kind of challenge that I kind of feed off of. Sometimes I'll feel like I don't have enough pressure. Sometimes I feel like there's too much pressure and it's kind of overwhelming, and you want to like alleviate that. Most of the time, I'm trying to put more pressure in front of me to push things forward. It's kind of that drive, and that's like a motivating factor of how to take things to the next level. I think those kind of challenges or pressures that expand your boundaries of what you think is possible. A lot of the things you see in life, you'll look at them and you'll say, you know what, I could do this because I've done this before. And if only unless you've overcome your boundaries of what you think is possible, whether that's in pickup and approaching the hottest girl while she's surrounded by a bunch of gigantic dudes with tats all over them, or if you're looking at a business situation, you're trying to close a deal and you're approaching the CEO of a multinational corporation and trying to close a deal, or you're trying to network with somebody and you know that's really important, it could change the rest of your life if you get a certain kind of outcome. All these little experiences, whether you succeed or fail, these reference experiences add up. And when you say a man in his prime, it might be because you just have more reference experiences, so you defined your path. But a lot of it is that process of pushing forward. Like some of the ideas you were talking about Soho House. It's one of the clubs I was referring Tyler to get into, along with various other corporations and clubs, because I was involved with a lot of them. Like when I was in New York, I joined a club called Carbon, or Attica. When I was in LA, I joined a club called Karma, and then there was another one that was called Exini. And I got into all these social clubs. I got into all sorts of business clubs. I got into traveling mastermind groups from all over the world. I refer to a bunch of them in a Memorable Milestones of Real Social Dynamics video that I posted on my channel. But all these different clubs introduced me to new people with new perspectives. And so much of my advisors are literally a decade or more older than me as well. People that have a lot of success, mostly in the business world, but a lot of success in life overall. And I think that adding all these feedbacks and having the right mentors also kind of accelerates that process. The reason why we have you on tour is because you're able to kind of just expand that whole process for all sorts of students all over the world. You're trying around multiple times around the world, to every continent except for Antarctica, and kind of exploring all the different cultures, all different stories, all different backgrounds, and that also expands you at the same time, and that identity level process that you're kind of going through, that self-actualization process, even though you're on a very, very high level, you're still pushing forward, you're still growing. I think that's really, really cool to see. And you're kind of sharing that on your weekly videos on your YouTube channel. I guess when I view that whole man in your prime concept, I believe that a lot of it is discovering your core self. That is a self that could continually change, it's kind of fluid. Because as the world changes, your core self kind of changes and is modified to circumstance. I don't believe that genetics is like the thing that kind of overruns everything. I believe that everyone kind of has a playing field that is more or less equal. If they use the resources they have, even those things where you have a guy who's born into poverty, he's born in the street. Well, the advantage of that is he's forced, if he's going to succeed and he's going to excel, to be extremely creative. Whereas a guy just getting given everything doesn't have that. But then again, if a guy is given a lot, if he wants to push it even further, he has the right mentors, he pushes through, and he doesn't get involved in a very easy trap of laziness, he can accomplish amazing things on a very, very high level as well. So it's about you using the resources and circumstances around you, discovering yourself, finding that process of life, expanding your boundaries, and pushing yourself emotionally and physically, and making sure that you could kind of like a scientist who's like a chemist. He's experimenting. It's like getting the chemistry that you want within yourself to become who you really want to be.
So I really like what you said there, Nick. There's a lot of good points. There's so many levels that, I mean, even as you're talking, there's things that you're saying that you're aware of, and then there's like things that you're probably maybe you're not aware of that are so cool that you're saying here. And I can really relate to them. I think any guy that's successful or strives for success can relate to them. There's a few levels. So one of the first levels was just kind of like the innate belief. And then number two was kind of like just finding a way. Right? So I talked to you about this a long time ago, actually. I don't know if you remember this. In Vegas one time I was at your house, and I talked about that innate belief. So for me, as I was growing up, I grew up, my dad is part of a royal family in Africa, the Ashanti tribes, and it's like my family is still part of the royal family in Southern Africa. All my family very educated, very well successful in their area of life. You know, on my mother's side, my great-great-great-grandfather is a guy named Samuel Jackson Prescott, and he's actually started the first half-black, half-white civil rights school, or equal race school in Barbados. So all throughout my family, there's been like this little little hints or traces of whatever you want to do, You can do it. Whatever you believe, you can do it. Even as I was young growing up, I was just told that. Like, oh, if I want to fly, I can fly. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous, but whatever I want to do, I believe that I could do. I also believe that if I had greed, like, I also used to believe that I didn't fit in because nobody else thought this way. Like, it was very weird as a kid to think this way. So I believe like I had green blood when I was a child growing up. At 14 years old, I brought my first Personal Power cassette CD tape by Tony Robbins. I convinced my mom that if I get this Tony Robbins CDs or it was actually cassettes at 14 years old, I'll do better in school, right? So I kind of always had this mentality. So what I'm saying is my thermostat for success was very, very high. T. Harv Eker, he talks about like Millionaire Mind. He talks about like if you have a thermostat in your mind for how you're supposed to be treated, whenever something goes above or below it, you will react. So the idea is that my success thermostat, whenever it would fluctuate and go down, I would find a way to achieve what I wanted. When I had a certain standard of dating in my life, if my dating results went down, I would find a way to achieve it and raise it because I felt uncomfortable. I felt like I was freezing in a situation where I didn't have what I want. And it sounds like you also had that kind of thermostat built into you and installed into you when you were very, very young, or just seeing your stuff with your family, right? You've had the thermostat. So as a viewer, right, we have guys or girls that are sitting down watching this video right now, they're saying, that's great, Madison, but I wasn't born with that thermostat. I wasn't born with that innate belief that I could do whatever I wanted. I was I grew up in a situation that didn't help me. But the great part about that is you can actually choose what you believe. You can choose what your beliefs are. You can choose what your subconscious thoughts are. You can install those. There's a whole bunch of ways to do that. I won't get too much into it right now, but the first one is a great book I always recommend called The Master Key System by Charles Haanel, which talks about how you can, it was actually the original book that The Secret was written on. It's called The Master Key System. And that original book, what it talks about is how you have thoughts, and whatever you consciously focus on as a thought with emotion behind it, that's the key. A lot of people just think visualization. No, it's visualization with thought and emotion. Whatever you focus on with thought and emotion, therefore becomes a habit. And whatever you have as a habit, something you're doing regularly, becomes automatic. And if something becomes automatic, then it sinks into your subconscious. And once a belief goes into your subconscious, it stays there to the point that you don't even know what's making you do it. You're just automatically fulfilling the direction. And you're just executing. You don't even know why. And all of a sudden you're found out like a year later you have the result that you wanted. So there are ways to change your innate beliefs. And this is something I talked about with you a long time ago. I said, is it actually environment that creates kind of like hustlers? Is it environment or is it upbringing? And I think it's a combination of both. I think it's a combination of environment and upbringing, but then there's that third part where you can choose, you can override environment and upbringing and just really kind of literally brainwash yourself to achieve and execute the way that you want. I've done it for periods of my life. I know it's possible. I've seen other people do it. I know it's possible as well. So that was the first part about the growth part. And the part about the executing or just kicking ass, I think that's also a choice you have to make. You have to, like, every person makes this choice whether they realize it or not. We're always making this choice. Always, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For example, I saw a video with Gary Vee today, Gary Vaynerchuk, and he was talking about, listen, if you have no education, you can go to the dollar store, buy things for $1, scan the barcodes, go on Amazon and sell them. If you have no education, you can go to eBay, find things on eBay, and because Amazon has more traffic right now and things are selling at a higher value per item, you can sell that same item on Amazon for 20 to 10% more. Like all these things, he's saying you could go and buy this and sell it. Like you could go to garage sales, for crying out. Go to garage sales on Saturday, find items at garage sales that are worth of money and sell them for $100. You know, like the people just don't have the discipline. They don't have the ability just to say no. This is also something that Bill Walsh said to us. It's not about choosing the customer, it's about choosing the wrong customer. Making sure you don't choose the wrong customer. Saying yes to the right customer, which also includes saying no to things that seem good but shouldn't be in your life. Another amazing book I read about that, just to kind of finish that thought off. Another amazing book I read is a book called Derek actually recommended this book to me. It's a book called Hannibal and Me, where Hannibal and me, in this book, they talk about imposter victories. So there's gonna be a lot of times in your life where you think things are going well, you think you got what you want. It's like an imposter victory. It's not the actual victory you want. It's like a short, temporary victory. It's kind of like where you date the stripper and she's really hot, but she's crazy. She throws temper tantrums and she spikes your tires. You know what I mean? Or she comes to your house and she sets your place on fire or whatever it is. So the point that you're just so stressed out from dating this girl that you don't actually even enjoy your life or the relationship anymore, right? It's like an imposter victory where you think you have something you want, then you get it, you're like, I don't really want this. So I think a large part of just hustling is being able to say no to things that look like they're what you want. Saying no to the wrong customer so you can say yes to the right customer. So yeah, that's kind of my final thoughts on that hustling stuff and kind of getting what you want. Do you have any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love the resources you provided, and I think that everyone who's watching these videos should be checking these things out. So my favorite book in terms of like the mentality, in terms of like being a hustler, was always based upon the principles that allow you to be really, really effective. So my favorite book is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. It's a book that kind of allowed me to focus on developing my core self as a principle-centered person as opposed to someone who is a hardcore hustler. But Madison, thanks so much for going down this path and sharing all these ideas, and I look forward to talking to you more in the future.
Thank you so much, man. Yeah, I really appreciate the whole RSD collective, the whole mastermind group we have going on. I've learned a lot from them as well, and I'm excited to always bring things to the table and share it with others. And I can't wait to see how these principles expand in the future and how what I think I know now that's really good in a few years from now, I'm like, oh wow, actually this is way better. So I'm excited to see that too. And I think the program that you're coming out with is fantastic. I think it's what we need. I think it's what everybody wants. And I'm very excited about it as well.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Cheers. If you'd like to join an educational program that will give you massive insights in terms of business, relationships, networking, and more, if you'd like to learn from me, if you'd like to learn from my mastermind mentors, if you'd like to learn from the people that I interview and get a massive amount of value in my personal business life and personal life, join me on the rsdfoundersclub.com. rsdfoundersclub.com is a membership site where you will meet other people that are students, other people that are mentors, other people that are part of my personal mastermind group. And we will talk with you in a phone app, a Facebook group, and a membership site where I've uploaded a very intensive video curriculum. Visit rsdfoundersclub.com and get full details on how we can enhance your life.